Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Let's Make Dinner, your audio library of amazing dinner recipes you can get on the table any night of the week. I am your host, Susie Weinrich. I'm super pumped about this recipe today. We are making a no dripping gravy, and if I had to categorize this recipe on my site, I think I would put it under the heading helpful content. And I guess I have that top of mind because Google just did an update where they said, if your content is not helpful, we do not want to show it. So, hey, Google, this is super helpful content. You know, you have the holidays and let's say you roasted the turkey or the chickens and now it's time to make the gravy and you're supposed to make the gravy out of the drippings. What if you don't have sufficient drippings? Or what if you have a really heavy mix of greasy drippings? And now how do you separate it? What do you do with it? What tools do you need? Sometimes making gravy can be extremely stressful and you don't want to end up with lumpy gravy. Like there are so many levels to gravy stress, I can't even tell you. But this recipe for no drippings gravy, it's consistent. You know how much you're going to get. It's not lumpy. It's crazy flavorful. You can change the flavorings depending on what you're serving it with. If you want a chicken gravy, a brown gravy, if you want turkey gravy, you can totally change it up to suit the dinner that you're making the gravy for. I also just recently made this recipe on Pin TV. So I will link in the show notes for you where I make Instant Pot mashed potatoes, and then I finish with making this no dripping gravy. So besides just listening to this recipe, you can actually also watch me make this recipe on Pin TV. Usually at this point in the audio recipe, I will go over some tips to share with you about the recipe, but I think I'm going to do that while I'm going through making the actual recipe so you can hear how things work out as you're making this. One thing I will say is that this recipe does take a little bit of time. So, of course, you could just make gravy with butter, flour, and chicken stock. Sure, you'll have fine gravy, but we're not making fine gravy. We're making outstanding gravy. So we're going to develop layers of flavor before we add the broth and really punch up the flavor of your gravy. To start off, you need a large high-sided skillet, and you're going to place that over medium-low heat. You need 1 full stick of butter, so 8 tablespoons of butter, and get that melting on the stovetop. Now you want to take, yellow onion is preferred here. It's a little bit sweeter, so grab a yellow onion if you have it, and slice it into about 1/4 inch thick slices. Place that in the butter, and here's where we're going to take our time. You're going to caramelize the onions. So if you pump the heat up, you're going to burn the butter, you're going to burn the onions, and the flavor is not going to be the same. Keep it on medium-low to maybe a medium, and you're just going to let the onions sit and caramelize. Stir it about every 5 minutes. Keep an eye on the pan, but you can also kind of just let it do its thing. The onions will start to get kind of a golden brown color around the edges, maybe about 15 to 20 minutes in. This is where you're going to add 1 full sprig of rosemary. There's no need to chop it, and actually it's better if you don't chop it because we're going to remove that later. So 1 full sprig of rosemary, and if rosemary is not your jam, you can absolutely sub thyme here, or you can do both. I've even added, at the holidays, I've added a sprig of sage, and that's delicious. So pop that in there. And then you want to crack 3 garlic cloves. You're not mincing it, you're not chopping it, just crack them open so that they can release their oils and their flavor into the gravy, but you're not going to end up with pieces of garlic in the gravy. Now let that saute and simmer and caramelize for about another 15 minutes over that medium-low heat. That's your flavor base of heaven. I'm telling you, it will smell so good. That's the flavor you're infusing into your gravy. Next, you're going to add another big flavor punch. So there's something at the grocery store called chicken base. It's going to be by the bouillon, but it's like a grown-up version of bouillon. It comes usually in a jar or a tub, and it's like a paste form. And it makes this gravy stand out. So you're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of chicken base. I personally like the Better Than Bouillon brand. It seems to be just a true, really good flavor without being overly salty. Now, if it's at the holidays, you can absolutely add a dash of ground sage and ground poultry seasoning at this point, just to punch up the flavor a little bit. Stir that chicken base in, and it should just melt right into the onions and right along with that butter. Also, this is where you can change up the flavor profile. The Better Than Bouillon brand has just about every base from lobster to ham, everything you need. If you want beef, turkey, chicken, whatever you want your gravy to match, then change up the base that you're adding here. All right, now you're going to add in 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. This is making a roux, and a roux is basically flour mixed with a fat that thickens a sauce or a liquid. Stir that flour into that butter mixture and just stir it around the pan for about 1 minute so that you get rid of that raw flour flavor. Next, you're going to slowly whisk in 3 cups of stock or broth. Again, this is where you can change up your flavor profile. So if you're using chicken, beef, turkey, change up the broth or stock to match what you're serving. Once that is completely whisked in and everything looks smooth, it's going to look really liquidy. Don't be nervous. What you're going to do is crank the heat up to medium high and let that simmer just for a few minutes until it thickens up perfectly. If you want to make it extra luscious and shiny and delicious, you can stir in a little bit of heavy cream at this point or add another pat or 2 of butter. But the very final step you want to do is strain the gravy. So you still have some onion pieces in there, you still have the garlic chunks, and you have the rosemary or the herbs that you added in. You want to strain all of that out. So what you'll do is take a fine mesh colander, place it over a large bowl, and strain all of those solids out. So I usually just pour it all right into that colander and then take my whisk and kind of stir it around in there. Make sure you scrape all of the gravy off the bottom of the colander so that you get every last bit. Give it a taste. See if you want more salt. See if you want more cream. If it got too thick, you can pour in a little extra broth. If it's not thick enough, you can put it back on and simmer it for a little bit longer. Right in the post, I have all of the troubleshooting things that you need to make sure that your gravy is absolutely perfect. Because for some people, they say that mashed potatoes are just the vessel to carry the gravy. So you want to make sure it's perfect and delicious. So that does it for today's episode of Let's Make Dinner. Of course, I will link the recipe for no dripping gravy right in the show notes for you, as well as a couple really killer mashed potato recipes that you can use to carry your gravy. And that's it. So I would love to have you guys follow and subscribe in your preferred podcast player, and also tell a friend, a loved one, a family member about this show and about the Mom's Dinner recipes. I would so appreciate it. Until next time, I hope this episode of Let's Make Dinner makes your dinner time a little easier. See ya.